You know that feeling when you're completely captivated by someone who's, well, doing almost nothing? Or when you feel the weight of a silence that's somehow louder than any words? We're gonna dive into that today. We're talking about the hidden language of stillness and these tiny, tiny movements, a powerful, almost invisible force that shapes our entire social world, from the boardroom all the way to a first date.
And let's start with this piece of ancient wisdom, because it really frames our entire conversation. This quote, it isn't just some philosophical idea. It's practically a blueprint for action. The idea that stillness isn't an absence of something, but actually a source of immense power. That's the core of what we're going to unpack.
I mean, think about an actor like Mads Mikkelsen. He can command an entire scene with what some people call visual silence. While everyone else is moving and talking, he's just still. And it pulls your focus right in. Forces you into this high-definition reading of his face, where the tiniest little muscle twitch carries enormous weight. Or, picture a monarch on their throne. The whole etiquette of the court created this powerful imbalance of motion. Everyone else had to move and speak, but the ruler's composed stillness made them the absolute center of gravity. A barely raised hand, a slight nod, that could signal reward or punishment, which made every single millimeter of their movement incredibly high stakes. And this silent language, it's literally hardwired into our DNA. Just imagine our ancestral hunters, where survival depended on communicating these complex plans without making a sound. A slight shift of weight, a subtle hand signal, the barest flicker of an eye. That could mean the difference between a successful hunt and, becoming the hunted.
So all these examples are powerful, but they make you wonder, right? Is this kind of presence or charisma just some innate gift you're born with? Or is it a high-definition skill that can actually be learned, broken down, and mastered? Let's dig into that.
It turns out the secret isn't in the big, loud, obvious movements. To be honest, most of that is just noise. The real, high-definition signal is being broadcast on a much smaller, almost invisible scale. Through these tiny signals, our brains are subconsciously wired to detect.
And science has a name for these signals: microexpressions. Now, these aren't just random twitches. They're brief, involuntary facial movements that literally leak our true, suppressed emotions. In a way, they're the truth fighting its way to the surface.
And the speed is what makes this so incredible. A microexpression can flash across a face in as little as 1/25th of a second. I mean, that's faster than you can blink. This is why you get a vibe or a gut feeling about someone. Your subconscious brain is picking up on signals your conscious mind completely misses.
The story of how they were discovered is actually pretty intense. Psychologist Paul Ekman was analyzing film of a patient, a woman named Mary, who was sitting there smiling and saying she was fine. But when he slowed the film down, he found this fleeting expression of intense anguish. It was just 2 frames long that revealed she was lying and was in fact still planning to take her own life.
Okay, so we've seen the biological basis for this hidden language. These tiny signals are the very foundation of what we're calling high-definition presence. So, the big question is, how do we learn to control them?
All right, the core principle is actually pretty simple. It's all about high contrast. And this roller coaster is the perfect metaphor, right? For the drop to have any impact at all, you first need that slow, deliberate climb to the top. Your presence works the exact same way.
Let's break that down. So first, you've got the climb. This is your baseline of stillness. By being physically quiet, you actually heighten the other person's sensitivity. They start trying to read you more intently. And then comes the drop. This is the single tiny micro motion, like a slight head tilt, that against that quiet canvas delivers a massive psychological punch. But to build that climb, you first have to eliminate all the noise. And these are the big signal killers: fidgeting, shifting your weight around, that rapid blinking, using filler words like and All this stuff just creates constant static that drowns out the signal you're trying to send.
This is the goal, a quiet canvas. Because it's from this place of stillness that you can create incredibly powerful communication.
So that's the fundamental method right there, mastering the climb and the drop. That's how you broadcast a clear, intentional signal in a world that is otherwise full of noise and constant distraction.
Look, this isn't just theory. Let's look at how these principles apply in the real world. Now, they're definitely useful in a high-stakes negotiation or a job interview, but maybe the most revealing arena is human connection and attraction, where these tiny movements function as these powerful signals of rapport and interest.
So let's walk through this 3-step interaction loop. First up, engagement. The conversation might be light, maybe some playful banter, but the underlying signal of confidence is sent through a still, unwavering gaze.
Next, the pivot. A tiny, almost imperceptible relaxation of your jaw can signal a shift to a deeper, more personal topic, inviting a real connection. And finally, the close. Here, a subtle body movement, like turning a shoulder, starts to signal the end of the interaction before you even finish your sentence.
But how do you know if your signal is actually being received? Well, you look for what scientists call honest signals. As you can see in this table, these are biological responses governed by the autonomic nervous system, which means they literally can't be faked. Things like pupil dilation, or when someone spontaneously mirrors your posture. That's real-time feedback that the connection is building.
And all of this creates what you could call a biological lock-on. See, this isn't about using cheesy pickup lines. It's about understanding the subtle, high-definition signals of interest and rapport that we all broadcast and receive in any deep social connection. And it's really, really important to be clear here. This skill, it's not about manipulation or coercion. It's actually about integrity. It's about lowering your own noise so you can broadcast a clear, honest, and intentional signal, making sure that what you mean to communicate is exactly what's being received. So let's recap this with a practical toolkit. First, lower your noise floor. Get rid of those fidgets. Second, master what's called energized stillness, a state of being calm but also alert and ready. Use those tiny millimetric shifts for maximum impact. Always remember that stillness amplifies your signal. And finally, always calibrate your presence to the person you're with.
This table here really breaks down the entire hierarchy of presence. Up at the top, you have the macro layer, big gestures that are obvious, and honestly, easily ignored. But as you move down to the micro, the millimetric, and finally the atomic layer, you get to the source of that magnetic quality. These are the signals, like a visible pulse, that are felt way more than they are seen. Mastering this gives you the high-definition edge, and it requires a fundamental shift in your mindset. You stop performing presence, which often comes across as noisy and insecure, and you start broadcasting it from a place of quiet confidence.
So let's end with this one final thought. Every single moment of every single day, your presence is sending a signal. After everything we've just covered, the only question that really matters is, what are you broadcasting?